What's going on, guys? It's the Draft Nerd, and today we are going to be ranking the top 10 running backs in the 2025 NFL Draft about midway through the season. So without further ado, let's get into it. At number 10, I do have Caleb Johnson, and I know there's going to be a lot of people probably mad at this ranking because I believe he's like second in college football in rushing production. But I'll get into why he's not my second running back in the draft. He's a running back out of Iowa, and he's a bit of a bigger back at 6 foot, 225 pounds, and I have about a top 150 grade on him. I think he's got really good speed, really good power, contact balance. I think he's got solid vision. He hasn't put the ball on the ground yet this season. He's got 0 fumbles, and so I think he's a really good running back. He's a really fun running back to watch. I think he's got good breakaway speed. You're not going to tackle this guy if you're just going to try to arm tackle him because he will run right through that. And then, like I said, he holds onto the ball very tightly. I don't think he's going to have any fumbling issues in the NFL either. And then what I really like, and what is one of my, big points on Caleb Johnson, is that although Iowa's offensive line is very, very good, when there isn't holes for him to run through, he does a really good job at cutting back and finding holes on the backside of the offensive line. He does that a really good job and a really good amount. Now, the things I worry about with Caleb Johnson, again, I like Caleb Johnson. This is a very good running back class. He just so happens to be number 10. I think he lacks true burst. He's got a good long speed, but for my running backs, I value burst over long speed just because you're not going to have too many opportunities in the NFL, especially to break off big runs and show off that, top speed. I'd much rather you have a really good burst. And I don't think he has, really good true burst. I also have questions about his vision. Now, let me get into this. Iowa's offensive line is so good most of the time that he has, 5 foot wide holes to run through. I think I could even find the right holes to run through without Iowa offensive line. And I'm just worried that once he gets to the NFL, he might not be able to find the holes as easily because NFL offensive lines aren't going to be opening up holes like that Iowa offensive line is. So it's not that I think he has bad vision. We just haven't seen, if he can consistently find smaller holes, more consistently. And then the other thing I have is that he's just not a great lateral athlete. Like I said, he's got really good straight line speed. He's able to, pick and choose the holes wisely. But he's just not really able to move laterally. He's not going to, juke anyone. He's not going to do anything like that. I think he's just a bit of a subpar athlete laterally. That's why I do have a B for changing the direction. But overall, I think he's going to be a really good running back. I think he'll probably be a running back 2 in the NFL. And maybe more of a running back by committee backfield. I don't think he's going to be a true bell cow in the NFL by any means, but overall, I really like Caleb Johnson, and just because he's ranked number 10 doesn't mean I don't like him. I want that to be known. Moving on to number 9, we got RJ Harvey, the running back out of UCF. Now, he's 5'9", 208 pounds, so he's a bit of a smaller back compared to Caleb Johnson, especially height-wise, and I also have a top 150 grade on him. And with RJ Harvey, his main calling card is his shiftiness and elusiveness and lateral agility. I think he's extremely shifty. He's a big play threat. He's going to break off, big runs here and there. He does have 17 rushes of 15 plus yards, which are, considered explosive plays. I think he's patient in the backfield. I don't think he's, too excited to, bounce runs to the outside, but I think he's able to kind of let blocks develop. And I think he's got a really good center of gravity as well with that, 5'9" frame. I love when my running backs are a little bit more closer to the ground, 5'8", 5'9", 5'10", just because they seem to have better contact balance. And with RJ Harvey, he's got very, very good burst and not so much the long speed, kind of opposite to Caleb Johnson. And I just prefer my running backs this way. I'd rather be able to burst through the hole and, get to the second level super quickly than, maybe get to the third level and turn on the jets, just because you don't have the opportunity to do that much in the NFL. I think he's got amazing change of direction. I got A+ for that. And I don't want to give him this comp just because I think it's a little bit disrespectful to this legend, but he runs a little bit like LaShawn McCoy, where he's, he does a really good job at setting up defenders and he's able to juke them out of their socks. I love that about him, but, I'm not going to compare him to LaShawn McCoy just because that's a legend of the game, and RJ Harvey does have his weaknesses, as we'll get into in a little bit. I think he's got really good vision behind that UCF offensive line. I got B+ for ball security just because he does have 2 fumbles on the year so far, so he's got to do a better job at keeping that ball, high and tight. He's got solid contact balance because of that 5'9" frame, and I think he could be a threat out of the backfield. UCF doesn't necessarily play him much, in the receiving game. He's got 15 targets, 11 catches for 205 yards. So, when he is getting the ball into his hands in the receiving game, he's able to make big plays happen. They just don't really utilize him much in that kind of area of the game. Moving on to some of the weaknesses, though, to his game. Again, his long speed isn't great, although I do think that's an overrated trait for a running back. He lacks true power, B- for power. I don't think he's going to be able to, lower his shoulder and, fight for extra yards like some of these other running backs in this class. But I don't think it's bad by any means either. And then the last thing is he's a bit of an older prospect. This is his 4th season at UCF, and he has tore his ACL back in, I believe, 2021. So, a bit of an age/durability concern for him, but, strictly what you see on the field, he is a very fun running back to watch. Maybe not an RB1, but he'll be a really fun RB2 kind of change of pace scat back, in my opinion. Really big fan of RJ Harvey. Moving on to number 8, we do got Devon Neal, and Devon Neal I got him at number 8, but he is one of my favorite running backs to watch in this class. He's a running back out of Kansas. He stands at 5'11", 215 pounds, and he's just such a fun player to watch. I got a top 100 grade on him. Similar to RJ Harvey, he's a really good shifty back with really good lateral agility. Lacks maybe true elite long speed at a B+, but he's got really good burst, really good change of direction. He's super slippery and creative in the backfield especially. He's able to keep his legs churning through contact, although I don't think he's going to lower his shoulder by any means. When he does get hit, he does, give you effort. He doesn't just fall down right away, which I really like in my running backs. And then I also think he's got receiving potential. Again, he's only got 15 receptions for 145 yards, but when you're this type of running back who's just really, explosive once you got the ball into his hands, you want to just get him a couple screens a game to see what he can do in space. So I really think he's got really good receiving potential. Doesn't have good long speed, not, a great runner in between the tackles. He's kind of suffers from, wanting to bounce runs to the outside. If he thinks he can, take it to the outside, he will. And in the NFL, a lot of running backs have a hard time realizing that there's a lot of really good athletes on NFL defenses. Even if they're edge rushers, they can still catch you. So I think he's going to have a hard time, kind of learning that concept in the NFL. He's going to have to, take some time to really focus on, running through the designed hole in that offense and in that play. And then I also don't think he can pass block really good. He's not going to be a good third down running back that's able to, pick up blitzes and things like that. That's just not his game really. But like I said, he's going to be a really fun scat back who's, going to make, 5 highlight plays a season. And, people are going to think he's a lot better than he actually is. But to me, he's still a running back 2, change of pace back, similar to an RJ Harvey, just with a little bit more oomph, if you know what I mean. Moving on to number 7, we got Trevor Etienne, the brother of the running back in the NFL already, and Travis Etienne. He did transfer to Georgia, formerly from Florida, and he's 5'9", 205 pounds, so really good size in my opinion for a running back, and I do have a top 100 grade on him. Athletically, he's got all you want. He's got good long speed and good burst, and he's got a good lateral movement as well. All A's across the board for his athletics. He's not going to be the most powerful back. He will, fight for extra yards here and there, but he's not going to run anybody over by any means. I think he's got solid contact balance with that 5'9" frame. Good ball security for the most part, only 1 fumble this season. He did miss a game though, week 1 due to some character concerns, which we'll get into in a little bit. I don't usually like to talk about character concerns just because, I'm not interviewing these guys. I don't know how they are outside of the, football field, but I will talk about it a little bit here in a second. I think he's got solid vision, and I think he could be a really good receiving back as well. I don't think he's, a nuanced route runner, but he's similar to some of these other guys we've talked about where you just want to get the ball into his hands and see what he can make happen. I don't think he's very powerful. I don't think he's going to be able to lower his shoulder, in the goal line or anything like that. And I think he's an inconsistent pass blocker. He's shown flashes of being able to, pass block and be able to pick up blitzes and know what to do. And then there's other times where he looks clueless trying to pass block. So I think he does show the ability to do so, which I really like. He's just got to kind of get more consistent at it. And then about the character concerns, I believe it was like a DUI or something like that he got called. Just a young kid being stupid. A lot of these college athletes have a DUI or this or that, and then they clean it up once they get to the NFL, and you never hear another bad word about them. So I'm not gonna sit here and say he's got bad character issues or anything like that. He just made a dumb decision, most likely. So I'm not gonna hold that against him. If it keeps happening though, then obviously we can hold that against him. But for now, I think he's fine. And I think he's just a really good, fun athlete to watch. And That's why I got him here at number 7. I think he could potentially be a running back 1 for a team. Like I said, this running back class is really good, so even my 7th ranked running back in this class, I think could be a running back 1 in the NFL. Moving on to number 6, this might raise some eyebrows for some people because Ollie Gordon is here at number 6, and he was my number 1 running back coming into the season, and he just hasn't had the same season as he did last year, and we'll get into that. But he's a running back out of Oklahoma State, 6'2", 225 pounds, and I still do have a top 75 grade on him just because he has all the potential in the world, in my opinion. You know, he's not the most athletic guy in the world. Speed at a B+, burst at a B, and change of direction at a B+. He's not going to wow you with any of that, and that has gone down because he did put on some weight. He's at 225 now. I believe he was at like 215 or 210 last year, and he looked just a little bit more explosive last year than he does now. He looks a little bit slower. It looks like he's running in mud sometimes, so I would like to see him, you know, drop the pounds and kind of go back to the running back he was a year ago. I think he's got solid power though. Again, putting on that weight, he does have a little bit more pop in the shoulder pads. Good contact balance. Ball security's at an A. He does have one fumble. He fumbled this past week against Baylor, but you know, I don't think that's an issue for him necessarily. And I think he's one of the more creative runners. He kind of runs at his own pace. Like I said, he's not the most athletic guy in the world, but I don't know, he's just a smooth athlete. He's able to pick and, you know, choose holes, especially last year. This year, the Oklahoma State offensive line isn't as good, but last year, he was able to just find creative holes, and he seemed to always know where the biggest hole was going to be. This year, a little bit different, though. And then I think he's a bit of an average player in the receiving game. He does have 23 receptions this year for 142 yards, so they do try to get him involved. Again, he's the best player on this team, especially offensively, so you know, they try to get him involved as much as they can. You know, only 546 rushing yards and only 2 games over the 100-yard mark. Week 1, he had 104 against South Dakota State. And then in week 8, it looks like he had 107 yards against BYU. But he's put up a lot of 40-yard games, 50-yard game, a 77, 76. Like, he's just not the same player he was last year. And that could just be the Oklahoma State offensive line. But you know, you don't really know. He scares me a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if he returns because I do believe he would be a true senior if he does go back. So, you know, he's not the oldest prospect. He has time to go back. I would like to see him drop some weight, go back to his, you know, former self, and I think he could be a really good running back. I just have my doubts that he'll come out this year in this loaded running back class. Coming in at number 5, we have, again, one of my favorite running backs in this class, in Kyle Manangi, the running back out of Rutgers. He's 5'9", 209 pounds, and I got a top 50 grade on him. I think he's a very, very good running back. You know, athletically, he's nothing special. I got B+ for speed and B+ for burst, but I do think he's got really good change of direction. He'll get met, you know, in the hole and in the backfield, you know, a good amount of times. He's able to, you know, just completely change his direction and, you know, evade the defender. So I do think he's got good lateral movement. He just might not be the best linear athlete in the world. But what I really, really love about Kyle Manangi is he gives 1,000% effort at all times. And it's something about these Rutgers running backs. Isaiah Pacheco, who is the running back for the Chiefs, is, you know, the similar mold where he just runs with a lot of aggression and he never gives up on a play, similar to Kyle Manangi. Arm tackles are never going to work on this guy. He runs right through those. And he's got 52 missed tackles forced. And that's not because he's the most shiftiest guy in the world. He's just juking people out of their shoes and spinning and stuff like that. He's just running through tackles. And then, like I said earlier, he does have sneaky change of direction. I got A for power, A for contact balance, A for ball security, 0 fumbles this season. And then I think he's got, you know, solid vision as well. You know, the things I do have questions, though, is that he's not the best natural athlete. Like I said, doesn't have, you know, good linear speed, anything like that. But he does have sneaky change of direction, and he isn't much of a threat in the receiving game either. He's got 10 receptions on 12 targets for 115 yards. So, you know, he's not going to be able to run any choice routes or anything like that. His hands don't look, you know, very soft. But, you know, he's able to catch swing passes and a couple screen passes and, you know, just run aggressively. But, you know, if you're drafting a guy like Kyle Manangi, you're drafting him to be that power back. I think he could be a running back 1 in this league, and I think he could be similar to a guy like Isaiah Pacheco. I think Pacheco's a little bit more of a good linear athlete than Kyle Manangi, but they are both similar to where they're just going to run people over. If, you know, there's no hole to run through, they're just going to, you know, just run straight through the offensive line and then, you know, into the defensive line. And, you know, I really like my running backs to do that. I love aggressive running backs, and that's exactly what Kyle Manangi is. Big fan of Kyle Manangi. And he's climbing my boards, you know, week by week almost. I believe when I did this video before the season, I don't even think he was ranked in the top 10. I think he was either RB 11 or 12, and now he's at 5. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's top 3 if some of these other guys return. So, big fan of Kyle Manangi. Love him. Moving on to another one of my guys in this class, in number 4, Trayvon Henderson, the running back out of Ohio State. And he's 5'10", 208 pounds, so a big, stocky running back. And I do got a top 75, you know, grade on him. And he's really just, he's an all-around running back. He's got really good athleticism, A for speed, A for burst, A for change of direction. He's a big play threat, especially his freshman year at Ohio State. He was an absolute menace. You know, hasn't necessarily been the same since then. A lot of injuries have, you know, piled up on him, but he's a big play threat waiting to happen, super fluid athlete, and I think he could be a really good receiving back as well. Just get the ball in this guy's hands, and he's going to make something happen. You know, some of the cons I got for him, though, is he has dealt with injuries the past 2 seasons. He has been healthy this season, which is a really, you know, good thing to see. First time he's been healthy since his freshman year. He's just dealt with foot injuries, I believe it was, broken bone in his foot, something like that. Just lingering issues like that. So he might not be the most durable athlete in the world. You know, most of his yards came from big plays, especially the past 3 years. This year, he's kind of improved in that way. And then he doesn't necessarily play with a lot of power. With that 5'10", 208-pound frame, I would like to see him lower his shoulder and kind of fight for extra yards a little bit more than he does. But for the most part, he reminds me, and this is coming from a Giants fan, he reminds me like a little bit of a lesser Saquon Barkley. He's got the same kind of stature. He's a little bit lighter than Saquon Barkley at only 208 pounds, but you know, his running style is the same, and he makes the same mistakes as younger Saquon Barkley would make, where if there wasn't anything up the middle, he would, you know, rely a little bit too much on bouncing things to the outside and making big plays that way. I think he does struggle with that a little bit, but you know, for the most part, he's an all-around athlete. You know, he's got really solid contact balance. He's a good athlete. The real question is he going to be able to stay healthy in the NFL? I don't know if he's going to be able to be a bell cow running back in the NFL just due to his durability issues, but I think, you know, in a running back by committee, I think he could be a really, really good weapon for an offense. Cracking the top 3, we got Omarion Hampton, the running back out of North Carolina. And he's a big guy at 6'1", 220 pounds, and I got a top 50 grade on him. Now, Omarion Hampton is so fun to watch. He's my type of running back. You know, not the best athlete, B pluses across the board for his athleticism, but that's not his game. He's a, you know, north and south powerful runner. He's got A+ for power, A+ for contact balance, A- for ball security. He doesn't have any fumbles, but he had a couple last season. And then he's got really good vision as well. He's that, you know, running back, that's going to be a really good goal line back. He's a north-south runner. He's not going to try to bounce anything to the outside. He's going to take what he can get. And that's the type of running back I love. He's not going to take many, you know, losses just because he's going to either run through arm tackles and pick up at least a couple yards, or he's just going to run straight through the hole and pick up, you know, 5 yards consistently. He's not the best lateral athlete, which if you're drafting him, you're knowing this, and you're not gonna, you know, ask him to run much outside zone or anything like that. He's going to be more of an inside zone, just, you know, north and south runner, like I said. He doesn't necessarily make people miss. He's not, you know, going to juke you or spin or out of a tackle, anything like that. He's just going to straight run you over, stiff arm you, and just pick up as much yards as he can. I mean, he's cracked 1,000 yards already through week 9, and he's only had one game that he hasn't went over 100 yards, and that was week 2 against Charlotte, where he had 77 yards. He's got 9 touchdowns. You know, he's got 23 receptions too for only 172 yards, so they get him involved in the receiving game, but you know, that's just not his game. He's not able to make people miss in open space. He's just going to run people over. But I'm a huge fan of Omarion Hampton, and I would love for my Giants to draft him. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge in the second round. But moving on to number 2, which was really, really close with Omarion Hampton, we got Quinsean Judkins. the running back out of Ohio State, formerly played for Ole Miss. And he's 6 foot, 220 pounds, a similar size to Omarion Hampton, and kind of a similar playstyle as well. I got a top 50 grade on him as well. I think he's a bit better of an athlete than Omarion Hampton. I got A for speed, B plus for burst, and A for change of direction. But he's also just as powerful, maybe not as powerful, but he's still a powerful running back. I got A for power, A for contact balance, A for ball security, and A minus for vision. He's kind of like Omarion Hampton with a little bit more juice in my opinion. Really good power, really good balance with a thick lower half, keeps his legs moving through contact no matter what, and he's got good vision and patience as well. He doesn't offer much in the receiving game, only 8 receptions for 76 yards, nothing crazy in the receiving game. I don't think he's got the best long speed. It's a little bit average in my opinion, but with his combination of lateral agility, burst, contact balance, power, he's an all-around running back who could very well be a first-round pick in this year's draft. I wouldn't be surprised, but I do have a top 50 grade on him just because he's not putting up the best counting stats. Again, only 520 yards, 6 touchdowns, averages 6.5 yards a carry, and that's because he's splitting time with another really good running back who we just talked about, and Trayvon Henderson. So, doesn't have the counting stats, but when you put on the tape, you can tell he's a very special running back. And then moving on to number 1, to no one's surprise, we got Ashton Jenty, the absolutely generational talent at running back, and he plays at Boise State. He's 5'9", 215 pounds, and I got a round 1 grade on him. Wouldn't be surprised if he goes even in the top 10 at this point. I mean, he's on pace to break Barry Sanders' rushing record. Like, this dude is absolutely insane, and I think it'd be easier just to go over some of the cons he has. And the only thing that I have a problem with him with is, his ball security is a little bit of a concern. Last year he had 5 fumbles. A lot of them were on second effort plays, which isn't as bad as if it was just, him being careless with the football. This year he does have 0 fumbles, but he has had a couple times. I believe it was the Hawaii game where he was very close to fumbling it a couple times. His knee was just down, or his forearm was just down before the ball came loose. So I still do have concerns with his ball security. If you just look at the stat sheet, you would say, oh, he cleaned it up, 0 fumbles. He went from 5 fumbles to 0 fumbles. He's still a little bit loose with the ball, I'm not going to lie. But moving on to, everything else in his game is amazing. He's got really, really good speed, unbelievable burst, really good change of direction on lateral agility. I mean, he's able to run right through people. You'll see, highlights of this guy. Basically, every run he has is a highlight-worthy run. I mean, he's able to run through arm tackles. He's able to stay up if people go low on him. He's able to hurdle people, juke people, spin people, truck people. He's got really good vision. He's able to pick the right holes, behind that Boise State offensive line. And then in the receiving game as well, he's not really utilized, which is surprising to me. Only 12 receptions for 50 yards. Even if you're getting this guy a screen pass here and there, a swing pass, just get the ball into his hands in open field and he's going to make something, amazing happen. So, really, maybe his pass blocking is not, up there. He's not the best pass blocker, but besides that and his, ball security concerns, he's an absolutely generational running back. He's up there with the likes of a Bijan Robinson who went top 10, a Saquon Barkley who went 2nd overall, Leonard Fournette. Like, he's in there with those type of guys. He is an absolutely elite running back prospect, and I'd be surprised, depending on who's picking in the top 10, I'd be surprised if he gets out of that top 10. Ashton Jenty is absolutely generational. And he's the best running back in a very loaded running back class. Like I said, all of these guys, if we compare this class to last year's class, I would take Ashton Jenty over, who was RB1? It was Jonathan Brooks. I would take Ashton Jenty over Brooks, Quinsean Judkins over Brooks, Omarion Hampton over Brooks. And then Kyle Manangi and Trevor Henderson, I think they're in the same conversation as a Jonathan Brooks. So there's about 5 running backs in this class if, backs don't return this year. There's about 5 backs in this class that would, go ahead of the RB1 in last year's class. This is such a good running back class. I cannot stress that enough. But with that being said, these are my rankings as of now. Again, things are subject to change once we get closer to the NFL draft. But for right now, this is my top 10. Let me know what you guys think of it down in the comments. And as always, this is the Draft Nerd, and thanks for watching.